Welcome back to another episode of It Starts With You podcast. Today I am so excited for our guest, Amanda Walker. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
I am so excited to be here, and I was like bound and determined to make it happen for you today.
Yes, we here over at the podcast, we just need to keep it real that we can't control technology. And so Amanda's internet went out right before recording. And so she is just going with the flow here.
Yeah, it was funny because it was like I had a webinar right before. I had like hundreds of people signed up. I was like, "It's for real?" And then your podcast, but it's like, how bad do you want it? That's how I always look at it.
Yeah.
Like the resistance, how bad do you really want to make it happen? So I'm pumped to be with you.
I love it. See, lessons already. And we talk a lot about on the podcast about being resilient. So this is going to be a great conversation. It's a great way to kick it off. So I want to introduce Amanda first because she has a really impressive, background and experience. And then we're going to really dive in. And Amanda and I actually got connected through a mutual connection, which I think is the best way to really meet people. I'm so excited to talk to her about today about her journey, her expertise in helping people create frameworks and really achieve levels of success. So Amanda is a master certified performance coach, speaker, and framework building ninja. I absolutely love that. Framework building ninja. She's the creator of the Best Damn Coach program and Framework Builder Lab and the host of the Best Damn Coach podcast. Amanda is a former high school teacher turned certified master coach who is obsessed with coaching over here as well. And she's on a mission to help 1 million coaches transform the lives of 1,000 clients through her podcast, through thousands of clients through her podcast, content, and programs that support the coaching industry. Amanda is a certified master life and performance coach, certified NLP and hypnotherapy practitioner, level 1 CrossFit coach, and precision nutrition coach. Just like a few things going on. She has a combined 25 years of diverse and immersive coaching experience that she really now integrates to help make coaches better and grow their businesses. She is an Arizona native, wife to a fellow entrepreneur, and mama to 2 passionate kiddos. What a bio. You are busy.
It's like as you read it though, do you ever have that moment of like, oh, that's cool. I've done some things. But what I really love about it is like, it's unique, which is what I think when we speak to frameworks is that like your lead up to this very moment is a blend of all of these things that makes you different than anybody else in the world. And so I think it's important to just remind yourself like life experience is really important actually when it comes to doing what we do now.
Oh, I love that. And that is so true. I know sometimes when people read the bio, you're like, oh, it feels awkward to have someone read it. And then you have this moment of kind of going like, yeah, I did that stuff. And your bio is different than everybody else's bio. I love that. All those unique experiences. So I'd actually love to hear you chat a little bit more about what got you into this space. I mean, you've got all of that kind of background and things that you have brought. What got you into doing what you do now?
I mean, I think it started when I was 15. Took my first job as a basketball coach for 5 and 6 year olds. And I learned very quickly that you can't just like say all these words at them to get them to listen. The fastest way to get them to do the things you want is to give them specific steps and methodologies and processes. So it started with the cookie jar method, which is what I taught them to shoot a basketball. And so I realized that really quickly, and that's really been embedded to all the work I do. I decided to teach and coach, used frameworks in the classroom. I have an extensive athletic and coaching background and group fitness instruction, same thing. It's like break it down into bite-sized steps. It guarantees consistency, repeatable processes. And I mean, I even do this as a parent, right? It's not just like wash the dishwasher. It's like so my brain just thinks in frameworks and processes. And that is really what's led me to this moment now. And so I've used frameworks in my business, started in the health and nutrition space and grew a very successful side of the company there. And then I was like, I got to give this to more people because while I don't have any interest in really having a certification, I feel like the way I can uphold the integrity in the coaching business is to always be results driven and client driven. And that comes from the results. And so that's what we do now. We help students build their frameworks in the lab and then, of course, grow their coaching business inside Best Damn Coach.
I love that. I was just jotting down as you were talking these frameworks and these processes and being results driven because, in so many spaces, like when people are working in organizations, when they're trying to run their business, when they're trying to take their, complex things or they're trying to take like things out of their brain and teach it to other people, I find that people can really struggle with putting that into practice. So What are some of the, like when someone comes to you and they're like, okay, I have all these ideas, what are some of the like conversations that you have initially to help them really get to thinking about these frameworks?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you nailed it is we have all these ideas and they just hang out. Even some great coaches that I know like have never really locked in their process. It just swirls around. And the problem with that is it's not scalable, right? And it's not
Mm,
really repeatable. And at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I like my time and anything I can do in my life to create scalable opportunities. I'm always hunting for them. And
mm,
so the first conversation that I often have is like, but where do you want the client or the employee or the person, whoever that is, to be at the end? Like, what do you want them to show for what they've done with you? And I think this is a really big gap just in the coaching industry is that
mm,
there aren't tangible things that people like more confidence, happier. Like, of course we want those things, but like, how do you know they're going to have more confidence? What are they going to show for it or happier? And so step one is really getting some clarity around the tangible exit, like the tangible things that we want at the end. And then literally call my process, my framework for teaching frameworks, reverse design. Like we start there and then actually we reverse engineer everything we want from that point. And I think this is where a lot of light bulbs turn on of like, okay, if we want, for a health coach and we want our clients to feel healthier, what does that look like? Is it a 7-day meal plan? Is it fitness? Is it sleeping better, right? Let's get some clarity on what those outcomes are before we actually step into the coaching environment. So I'd say that's kind of usually like the first part of the conversation.
mhm. I love that too because being in the coaching, and I have this conversation with people all the time, coaching and when I'm helping people with speaking, is we tend to use, and even in organizations, I mean, helping people with communication is the number one thing that I help people with, whether it's from a boardroom or from stage. And people love these fluffy words, right? And I know I fell into the trap when I first started, and I still can in, the coaching field. It's like, we want you to feel more confident. We want you to have your potential. We want you to, feel invigorated, like all of these words. And people are like, so what do you mean by that, right? Like actually getting people to be more specific in their language around the results that they're going to get.
It's so good. It's like speaking, especially too, is, um, just like to go off on a little coaching tangent is, our brain has associations with words and outcomes. It's called internal representation, right? So if I'm reading somebody's Instagram video, their marketing reel, a reel or something, it's like, I help my clients feel healthier. Then when I have that picture in my mind, it's going to be very person specific and it might be pretty just like generic. But if I'm seeing somebody's Instagram reel and it says like, I help someone be able to do 10 burpees without stopping, like I know exactly like what the outcome is. And I think that that's where the opportunity is, especially in the saturated market. Things like best life, happier, full potential. While those are true, I think that standouts, the purple ducks, as we call them in our world, come when your willingness to like get crystal clear and more specific on those outcomes.
Mm-hmm. What do you find, and obviously in all of your experience in doing this, so for yourself, but also for your clients, what do you find as some of those biggest obstacles that got in your way or that gets in your client's way when they're like, okay, I know I want to run this successful business or I know I want this thing, but what is the thing that gets in the way of them being able to do that?
I mean, the default answer is finding clients, I think. I think this would be the number one problem that all business owners, no matter what level you're at to some degree, that would be like the surface level. But I think underneath it, what often is the struggle is like this was me, right? I came from a teaching background. I had no sales. I've never sold anything in my life, let alone myself and my services. I didn't know anything about marketing but I was great at coaching. So the struggle is like, how do I translate that? And so one of the greatest struggles is we're marketing already through the process. So we're marketing having already solved the problem, but our clients that we want to sign are like not even like they're still in the problem. And so we're marketing in a more advanced place, right? Instead of meeting the client where they're at. And so when I'm able to get my clients to like get that, like think about your old self. Just imagine you were sitting down at the coffee shop with your ideal client and you're like, what's your greatest struggle? Like those are the words we market with. And I think it goes back to that cliche we've probably all heard is like, show them what they want, but then give them what they need. So we want to market the show with what they want, but a framework actually gives them what they need to create the solution to that struggle. And so I think that's definitely one of the main struggles for sure.
Another thing that I find is, and that when you talk about like scaling, so we come in to any business or to any role and we're like, got all this energy, all this excitement. And then I feel like sometimes the reality hits, right? Like I always say, like life slaps you across the face and it's like the clients aren't coming in, or all of a sudden, a lot of the times what I hear when people, especially, entrepreneurs, they want to get in doing speaking, they get burnt out from one-on-one clients. Like, oh, I was so excited to coach and all of these things, and now I'm burnt out. And so now they're looking at how can they scale in different ways. Do you have like a moment that you were in your business that you're like, okay, I need to look at this differently and see how I use my time differently? Because I heard you mention that before, that you look at scalability.
Oh my gosh, I have like a bottom fallout moment for sure. So I think I alluded to this, but actually when we built and made our first seven figures, it was in the health and nutrition space. And so that's where I began. It was like what I was good at, it's what I knew, and I loved it. And then over time, people would ask me like, can you help me build a coaching practice? Like I see what you're doing. And so then I was like, I never really sought out to do that, but I'm going to give it a go. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the discussion of frameworks more directly, this discussion of building businesses. And so I had this few years where I was really doing both, and I hit that like I can't do both things well. And I remember getting an email from somebody I follow, and it asked this question. I woke up, checked my email at some point during the morning, and it was like, hey, if it wasn't for the money or the time you've spent building this thing, like would you still be doing the thing you're doing right now tomorrow? And I was like, no. It was like a resounding internal no. And I was like, oh my gosh. I literally was like, well, what am I going to do with this? And so I sat with it, prayed about it, journaled about it. And I was like, I'm fired up to have these conversations about frameworks and coaching exclusively. And so we made the big decision to shut down the health and nutrition side of the business. I probably could have sold it. Didn't even think about it. It was like a very emotional decision once I was in. And so for me, I didn't anticipate, I guess, like how much that would be starting from scratch, to be honest. And this was, a few years ago. And I share all of that because the cool thing about it is I had realized that I had built the health and nutrition side solely based on my one-to-one work. We did launch a group program, but I was still inundated with so many one-to-one clients, and it wasn't allowing me to have the quality of life and the vision. And so I kind of said, like, if I'm rebuilding, then I am doing it only one way, and that is 100% scalable. And I reflected on this question that a friend of mine who was extremely successful entrepreneur in personal training space. And he asked me early on, Amanda, I know you're having so much success, but like, what if you get 100 clients tomorrow? What are you going to do? And I was like, I have a waitlist. Like I just dismissed it. And so for me, true freedom and true success is where I'm at right now, because I could take 1,000 clients right now and I wouldn't have to do more work. Essentially, we have team and we have structure. Would we have to do some things in the back end? Sure. We just like make sure our clients are having success at that high of a volume, but we even have a client success manager who manages those things because it's so important to me. So for me, success has been defined differently. So that was a really long way to answer your question, but yeah. It's been a journey.
No,
for sure.
I love that. There's so many things that you were like, I was, jotting down. There's so many different things that you were talking about from that. It's like when we get to that, I love, it sounds so bad to say it. Like, I love to hear people's like breaking point, right? Because we know that like what did somebody said once, it's like the mess is in the message. I've heard it said, so I don't know exactly who it goes back to. But in that mess, like in that moment where we're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, what am I doing with my business? That's usually where like, that transformation starts to happen. So I love when people share that, because for anybody listening, like we all have those moments where we just go, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Like here I'm running a successful business. Why am I not happy? Like what's that next step? So I love that. And you getting clear on what would success look like for you so that you could scale, because most people want that. They want freedom and they want the success, and they don't want to be tied to, especially in this entrepreneur space, like we don't want to be tied down all the time. That's usually why you get into the, this type of space. So one thing I want to ask a little more about too is, you set up the infrastructure, right? So you've got like the tangible things of like, okay, if I want to scale and helping clients with their framework and helping them be able to scale, we need to have like tangible structure, things like that. What were some of the mindset or like emotional pieces, I guess, that came up for you when you're now scaling and you're transitioning things from not just Amanda doing it, but a team doing it? So like trusting people to do it and things like that.
Well, I think one specific just being again super transparent is when I worked to scale in the health and nutrition space initially, and what I did was hired coaches to coach underneath me, and they
Mhm.
were amazing women. But what I quickly learned is that my energy then was being more redirected to coaching them and training them, and my energy was being taken away from the clients, and I actually did not love that. And so when we kind of made some decisions, I was like, I don't want to go do that again. If I'm going to scale and add team, it's going to be on the back end. And so I knew that the way I was going to scale was going to be through exclusive me delivering the front end stuff. I do have a resident sales coach that coaches in one of our communities. But my point being is that the mindset had like I had to be willing to duplicate myself in other ways and to
Mhm.
let go of control of those areas where I am, not as great. And so transparently, I am not a very detailed person. Like I'm just super high level, big picture of the business. And then I'm like, can you make this happen? And so it's like being willing to admit your weaknesses and hold space for your strengths and hire people that complement them. And then also, like when I first started hiring years ago, I was hiring to like put out fires. I was like, I'm overwhelmed. Let me get somebody in the seat. And so I didn't have a lot of clarity. And so over time, I've learned like, tangibly, I like to write a list of things that are like not like I need space to fill in and then kind of watch gaps exist and hire for the gaps. And so that has been really, impactful for us as well.
And I love to hear that because, as you're elevating from obviously we talk about a lot of leadership on the podcast and how people grow in their leadership. And, as a leader, you have to continually grow and stretch yourself. And so as the, CEO and leader of your company, having to make those decisions and decide where does it make sense for me to delegate and what are the things that, I want to make sure I keep. And I can imagine you probably had to have some tough conversations in your business as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think the piece, like tough conversations with yourself, but also the thing that I think has been so valuable is um, being willing to make the tough conversations to keep the right people in their zone of genius, to like be able to recognize what your zone of genius. So I always say like, ask myself the hard question. And I love a good reference to a great book is 10x is easier than 2x. If you haven't read it, put it at the top of your list. But it's like, what are the things that only you can do in your life that you like it really can only do? And for me, that's parent my children, be a wife to my husband, and also coach my clients because I don't believe anybody can do those things quite like I can. But everything else is reproducible. So being willing to then just design your entire business model of you being the one that's, I'm the only one that designs group content. I'm the only one that does the coaching. I'm the only one that, produces the things that are really client facing and being willing to let people in that serve other roles so you can stay in your zone of genius and they could be in theirs.
I love that. And yeah, giving yourself that permission. So staying in your zone of genius. And this is such a good room. I love having guests on because they always share like books I've had on my list or things I've had on my list that I'm like, yes, I need. So I have had 10x is easier than 2x on my list for a long time. And now I'm putting it at the top of the list and I'm challenging all the listeners to add that to your list.
Oh my gosh, you need to. I read it once and I've listened to it 4 times. And every
Really?
time
Okay.
I'm just like it just really, and other people might read it and feel differently, but it just really met me at this scalability place in my life and business. And so, I hope it resonates with all of you too. And then that team, Dan Sullivan, he's actually the author of Strategic Coach, amazing. And Benjamin Hardy, I think, is the one who actually does his writing. They also have another book called Who Not How. That's great too.
I've heard of that one too. Yeah, and I've just seen multiple people that I do really respect as leaders and business leaders talk about this 10x and a lot recently. So clearly, it's like hitting me across the face, like Julie, read it, and everybody else read it. So helping people stay in their zone of genius, those of you who are in those leadership type roles, like what are the things that only you can do? And I absolutely love kind of, writing those down and thinking about what else can I transition off so that I can live into the freedom that I want in my business. And that's something that, you're walking the walk and then you're helping your clients to do too, right? So to help them really figure out what's their vision for themselves. What are some of the biggest like success stories or wins that you see from your clients when they make this shift from maybe kind of hodgepodging things or just like not having it all put together to when they create frameworks and sort of a sustainable process?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes just like little tweaks make such a difference. I can think of Erica, a student of ours. She's in multiple of my communities now. She works with like C-suite execs, like on burnout. And, um, you know, she comes from this very yogi-y, like flow space. And so structure
Mhm.
challenged her. But she was like overwhelmed when she came to me, like, I have all these one-to-one clients. I just don't know what to do. I'm like, you need a repeatable process. And so when she had that process, a couple things happened that were so cool. She just stopped like over talking her way to sales. So she was one of those,
Mm.
I don't know if you are familiar, like that was definitely me, but like she would get on
Mhm.
a call and she would be like, talk, 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 trying to justify why somebody should invest instead of just allowing her process to build trust. And so I love seeing like those kind of breakthroughs. I think of another student of ours, Inbal. She's a community building coach. And I had the honor of like attending one of her events when I was traveling, and she's like a master at bringing women together. And then at the end, like she never calls to action her services, right? And so she's in this like building this amazing community that was making $0. And I was like, are you
Mm.
in the hobby business or are you in the profitable business? So it's like one tweak to help her like feel confident enough through a framework that I teach around pitching offers. And like all of a sudden her business became profitable. Right. So I think there's just small tweaks. I could mention a million more, but
Mhm. Yeah, and it's the what I love was like building the trust and something you said is so important around like people almost like talking themselves out of the sale because and I see this a lot when working with people on speaking and communication is they feel like they need to prove that they're so smart or that they know so much and so they just keep like I say like word vomiting all over and then the person is so confused and so lost versus if they were to just have said a few key things and then listened and asked those questions and then also, people are looking for almost like a guide. Like they're looking for someone to tell them. They don't know necessarily what they need. They're looking to you as the expert, right? To tell them, like, this is how I can help you. And so you positioning yourself, which sounds like you're really, helping people do this, position themselves as the experts. This is the process that we know works and that, we know is going to help you.
yeah, and I think they're just people are afraid to feel salesy, especially if you've never come from a sale background. So it's like anchoring yourself in the service. Like you have the problem, you have the solution to a problem, and people want it. People are searching for it. So it's either going to be somebody else or it's going to be you, and you know the kind of quality of work you deliver. And so I find that like really propels and motivates people to understand like there's always going to be people searching for what you have. So do you want them to find somebody else or do you want them to find you?
Yeah, that reframe of it. I would say like the sales piece of it, especially you don't come from that background. That wasn't my background as well. So I know when I started, I was like, oh, I don't want to be, quote, the salesy. I don't want to be that salesperson. And it really took a lot of that reframing to go what sales meant. And that, if you believe that you have something that can help people and that you have a process that has helped people before, then you're really just helping people. I always say it's almost like not an obligation because that has a negative connotation, but it's almost like this amazing opportunity that you get to now help somebody through a challenge that you have a solution for.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I like the word like there is this sense of obligation, but I look at it like if you have the cure for a disease, you wouldn't like hold back, but like some people are in the same pain, equally pain of
Mhm.
some of the things that we support in organizations or in coaching. And so it is an amazing opportunity and the barrier of entry to being able to support those people is minimal, which I think is the gift of the industry, but also the challenge of the industry nowadays. But for sure, reframing sales and anchoring yourself in that service element is a process that I've definitely had to like work on myself over and over throughout the years.
Hmm. So knowing that you've got, I mean, you've got this amazing background, you've obviously grown really successful businesses. I'm curious, is there anything that you're working on right now that you're really excited about in your business?
This sounds so lame, but I'm a quick start. So my downfall or my positive the light side of that is that
Hmm.
I will start imperfect action and I don't need anything, like I just go. The downfall of that is I'm a quick start. And so I'm
Hmm.
constantly wanting to start new things and new ideating, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs resonate with. And so I also knew that scalability for me and the way one of the main ways that we bring in new clients is through webinars. It's like my favorite ways to teach. Obviously, it's my background, so anytime I can teach is amazing. Um, but I also knew like to be able to handle that and get a system in place, it would require me to not be a quick start, but to be a slow start and optimize. And so our companies kind of come up with a motto or a theme or focal point for each year. And so our company's theme for 24 was same but better. And so
Hmm.
I actually had to promise my team I will not launch any new offers this year. We are going to focus on the two
That's so hard.
offers.
I get you on that one.
I will not launch anything. We are just going to make better what we have in front of us. And it has just proven to be amazing. Like our revenue is up 64%. We're,
Wow.
increasing our team. I've seen so much from that, like just willingness. And it's hard. Like I have FOMO. I see people telling me they're like launching new offers at 6-figure launches. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. But like slow and steady wins the race. Like I can tell you exactly my numbers and projections. And that's not a place I could speak to years ago. It was a place I wanted to be, but couldn't
Mhm.
get myself into. So honestly, my excitement is like that we're there and I want more of that. And I want to be, I feel like I'm at a place where I built a machine and now I just get to open up the throttle or close it, like depending on how I want to, and just focus on, other things like speaking and getting to
Mhm.
interact with amazing humans like you. So, do I see a projection in the future? Yes, I do see an offer that's starting to like root itself.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be until 2025 for sure.
Hmm. I totally get it's almost like you were in we had a team meeting, so we do a quarterly meeting with my team, and we just did that recently, right before we were launching this or recording this episode. And my assistant, no, I'm not a quick start, I'm actually like a fact finder. So if we think of like the Kobe, I'm a fact finder. However, I'm like, I must be kind of a unique one because I'm also like, oh, I want to do this, but I want to do this, and I want to do this. And so I made a commitment to my assistant as well that I would be more planful in some of my launches because you get this like shiny object syndrome. And
Totally.
I think as like, the visionary, which we are when you're the leader, the head of the company, that's an important thing to have. While also having those people, like surrounding yourself with people on your team that can be like, hey, wait a minute, like we need to think through this. And so I know a lot of the people listening probably have that too, where it's like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. And sometimes it's like taking that pause. And like I always take the power in the pause. It's a speaking technique, but it's also a business technique to like lean into the things that are working. So I love that because that's definitely, and obviously it's working for you right now, knowing revenue is up. And how can we just get better and better and more known for the thing we're known for before we keep adding more on?
Yeah. And I think that so my mistake, and I tell this to my coaches all the time because I want them to get there faster, is I made lots of money in the beginning because I had lots of offers. And so
Mm,
what that left me was going wide and not deep. And so I was constant. I don't think I did as great of a job in client delivery as I am now, because I had so many things I was having to think about. And like, okay, I got to build content for this call and build content for this call. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, I've got one-to-ones. Like it was all over the map. And like, you can't do a great job. And so what it's given me the ability to do is shift deeper instead of
mm,
wide. And I see
mhm,
that benefiting my clients, so much now.
I love that. Okay, so if somebody's listening right now, Amanda, and they're going, "Oh, yes, yes." Like, what's like the first step that somebody could take if they're going, "I'm feeling like the version of you from before. I'm not through the transformation yet. I want to be where Amanda is." Like, what's the first step that somebody could take to help them towards this process?
I think just writing it down, it's so simple, but like really being like clear on like what is your ideal work week specifically look like? and that's exactly what I did. I wrote down like what if I could have like the most perfect business that like suited me, what would I be doing? And for me, I wrote down like 2 group coaching calls a week. That's what I would be coaching. And then I would sprinkle in one-to-one work, which I take about 2 one-to-one clients on at a time, just so that I keep my feet like wet and I'm still in coaching. But I don't, because the moment you start saying yes to the money and the one-to-ones is the moment you start pulling yourself out of the scalability. And so I would just say, like, write it down, like, map it out. What would that be? What days would you be working? Like, and put all objections, because objections, like little monkeys will come in. One of my clients always calls them mindset monkeys, and I stole that from her because I love it. It's like,
Oh, I love that.
are going to tell you, like, you can't have that. You can't do that. You're not making enough revenue yet to do that. All those things will exist, but it's like, put it in a box and put it on a shelf for a moment and like map out what that would be specifically. And then it's like, start where you can start. What's one thing you could do to start moving towards that, which might be building a framework for a group program or launching your group program, or it might be like deciding on how many one-to-one clients you're willing to take to carve out some open space to start building like the more scalable places. So it's going to look different for everybody, but I think it's like, you got to put down what you want on paper.
I love that. Okay, so a couple last questions before I wrap up. So the name of the podcast is It Starts With You, and I'd love to ask my guests, what does It Starts With You mean to you?
Immediately when you ask that question, I go back to like the beginning stages of business, because I say a lot, like, I had no idea that entrepreneurship was going to be like the fast track to personal growth.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. It's like nothing like entrepreneurship to like bring up all your insecurities and really like shine a light on them in front of the world when you're like failing in front of, or you perceive yourself to be failing.
Yes.
Yes. And so I think It Starts With You means to me that, like, what you're willing to do, the edges that you're willing to take yourself to, the risks you're willing to take are a direct result of what your business is going to do as well. And so if you stay in your comfort zone, then your business is going to be in a comfort zone. If you aren't willing to step out, then of course your business is going to suffer the consequences of that. And so I think sometimes people want to compartmentalize, like, oh, this me person over here is different from the business person. And I just think that's totally inaccurate. And I always like to say, like, I would never ask my students to do something that I wouldn't have done or tried myself. And so I do think it starts with us, and then we can show, model, teach for the people that we get to lead.
I love that. Every answer when I ask that question is so different. I just absolutely love it. And I say that all the time, like nothing like entrepreneurship. I say to face like the deepest, darkest parts of yourself. You never would, I never would have thought about that.
It's so spot on too. I was kind of like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah. I'm just trying to run a business. Why am I all of a sudden having this, like, all this stuff come up?
Totally true. I feel you.
I love that. So for those of you listening, really thinking about, and you can use this in so many different parts of your life too, like the risk that you're willing to take. I love how you said like the edge that you're willing to take yourself to, and you'll see that show up in all these different parts of your life because you bring your whole self to all of these different pieces. So thank you so much for joining us, Amanda, for all of these insights. I know I jotted down so many things, and I so appreciate your expertise and sharing your leadership and your frameworks and business knowledge. For those who are listening and want to stay connected with you, share with us, what do you have going on right now? And also, how can people find you and stay connected?
Yeah, I mean, I love just to have conversations with podcast listeners. So the great place to have that is in the DMs of my Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. So at A Walk My Way is my Instagram handle. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send a message. And then if you're interested in building your framework and learning about the process around framework building, I host a weekly workshop, and you can jump into that at amanda-walker.com/framework. You'll get a link to sign up, join me, teach you all the steps, and of course, listen to the podcast too, Best Damn Coach. There's lots of places to connect.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll also make sure that we drop all of those links in the show notes as well. And as always, one of the greatest gifts you can give to our, guests who take their time to come on the podcast and share with me and all of you their expertise is to let them know that you were listening to the episode, right? Like sometimes we're like, hello, who's out there? So leave, reviews, comments, go check out Amanda's podcast, share this episode, reach out to Amanda and let her know, like, hey, thanks so much for this tip. I'm implementing implementing that. That's one of the best things for those of us who, spend our time doing this and create content, is to hear from you that it was helpful. So thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to have you back again next time.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.